And the video is titled "Sexual Assault Victim Describes Trauma of Sharing Locker Room with Male Lia Thomas." Now, if anybody doesn't know, Lia Thomas is a biological male that pretty much was a crappy, sorry excuse of a male swimmer. It used to, that's just keeping it facts, you guys. It was a sorry excuse of a male swimmer, and because I forgot what the original name was, but because Lia Thomas could not compete with other men, they transitioned to become a woman, changing their name to Lia Thomas, and have been competing with biological women. And in the process of doing such a thing, I mean, what they have subjected women to endure is totally sickening. I want you guys to please check this out, all right?
And Ranking Member Scanlan and members of the subcommittee. I'm Paula Scanlan, a spokeswoman and advisor for the Independent Women's Forum, and a former NCAA athlete. I am here today to share my personal story. I started swimming at a very young age, and by age 8, I was swimming competitively, and by late middle school, I was devoting at least 20 hours per week to swimming. I gave up countless Christmas holidays, weekends, and social events to work towards my goal of swimming Division I. A dream that came true when I began swimming for the University of Pennsylvania.
All right, you guys. I even though you might be wondering why the hell does she has to say all of this, it is actually very important. We have to understand, right, that women, they already know they cannot compete with men. They know this. And this is the reason why they have separated women's sports from men's sports. But what I find really, sad is that when you have women who have been training all their lives, you get what I'm saying, from the time they were children, like this woman has stated, to actually compete on the highest level. Do you know how utterly repulsive and disgusting it is that their dreams would be crushed? All the years of training, sweating, grinding hard is all for naught because a biological man is not going to dominate them in every single category. I mean, what was the point of all that training? And one thing I think a lot of people don't realize is that in the process of training, do you know how many athletes have to forego, spending time with their friends? How many athletes have to forego going to the party? How many athletes have to forego just having a normal childhood, a well-balanced childhood? No. A lot of their lives is consumed with this sport. And now all that training went for naught. It was all for nothing, all because you could have a Lia Thomas come out of nowhere and just dominate them in every category. This is crazy, guys.
While I am not an NCAA champion, I hold the New England Independent School League record in the 400-yard freestyle relay, a record that has stood since March of 2017. In September of 2021, Lia Thomas began participating as a member of the Penn women's team. Lia, formerly Will, had personal best times in every freestyle event that were faster than the women's world records. Once the season began, Thomas was leading the country in multiple events, while only placing in the top 500 in those events on the men's team. Thomas later became an NCAA champion in the 500-yard freestyle, the first NCAA champion in our women's team history program. While many of you already know this, what you do not know is the experiences of the women on the University of Pennsylvania swim team. My teammates and I were forced to undress in the presence of Lia, a 6'4" tall biological male, fully intact with male genitalia, 18 times per week. Some girls opted to change in bathroom stalls, and others used the family bathroom to avoid this. When we tried to voice our concerns to the athletic department, we were told that Lia's swimming and being in our locker room was a non-negotiable, and we were offered psychological services to attempt to re-educate us to become comfortable with the idea of undressing in front of a male.
So when these women addressed their concern and their discomfort of having to undress themselves, again, some of you may not realize how disgusting this is, but just think about if this was your sister, or if this was your daughter, or this was your mom, think about if they had to undress themselves in front of a 6'4" biological man who still has the male genitalia. Let's keep it a buck. His balls, right? His balls, his penis is totally intact. Could you imagine? Would you want your mom, your daughter, your sister, your aunt to undress themselves completely naked in front of a 6'4" biological male? And then when they actually complain, and I won't even call it complain, when they address their concern, you have the school offering psychological classes for their mental state, so that they can learn how to deal with this and cope with this, as if they the ones that are wrong, as if they the ones that are crazy, as if they the ones that are lunatic for not embracing Lia Thomas.
To sum up the university's response, we, the women, were the problem, not the victims.
Wow.
We were expected to conform, to move over, and shut up. Our feelings didn't matter. The university was gaslighting and fear-mongering women to validate the feelings and identity of a male. As an attempt to voice my concern about the situation we were forced into, revealing the unjust and unfair treatment, I wrote an op-ed for the Daily Pennsylvanian, the student-run newspaper. I approached this from a scientific, statistical perspective where I used my engineering background to discuss how Y chromosomes cannot be changed by any surgical procedure or systemic therapy. This biological fact lends itself to athletic advantages that cannot be mitigated by lowering testosterone levels, which are readily apparent in sports competitions and locker rooms. The Daily Pennsylvanian published my article on the evening of February 10th, 2022. Only a few hours later, my piece was retracted. I was given no notice nor reasoning. Again, I was silenced for my dissenting viewpoint and felt my First Amendment rights were denied by my university. This is representative of a greater issue, the destruction of free speech. Today, any discussion maintaining the sanctity of women's spaces is labeled transphobic, bigoted, and hateful. What's bigoted and hateful is the discrimination against women and the efforts to erase women and our equal opportunities, dignity, and safe spaces. One might ask, why do I speak so passionately about issues that seem hypothetical, or some may perceive as only impacting a small number of women? This is not hypothetical. This is real. I know women who have lost roster spots and spots on the podium. I know of women with sexual trauma who are adversely impacted by having biological males in their locker room without their consent. I know this because I am one of these women. I was sexually assaulted on June 3rd of 2016. I was only 16 years old. I was able to forgive my attacker, but violence against women still exists. Let us not forget the viral Me Too movement that empowered female victims to speak up. It casts a spotlight on the widespread prevalence of sexual assault and abuse, including in scholarly and educational institutions. Individuals on this committee have previously stated violence against women is all too common. I am grateful for those members who have brought awareness to the violence against women in the past, but unfortunately, there's still much to be done. As a sexual assault survivor, many policies pushed today completely ignore my experiences and many women like me. I ask the members of this committee, please consider this issue outside the lens of political affiliations and understand the true impact of ignoring the realities of womanhood. Future generations depend on us. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today.
Wow. So you guys heard that for yourselves. But could you imagine how completely repulsive that is? Again, she was 16 years old, you guys. 16 years old when all of this took place. And again, are we going to call the biological women crazy because they're voicing their concern? Again, I don't know how, as a man, that you can just stand by and think that this is cool or this is okay or adopt a position of neutrality. All right, check out this next video because, again, I'm telling you guys, it just keeps getting worse. But matter of fact, this is a video. Let me see if I can show you guys. My childhood was ruined. Detransitioners Chloe Cole talks about team procedures. Check this out, you guys.
My name is Chloe Cole, and I am a detransitioner. Another way to put that would be, I used to believe that I was born in the wrong body, and the adults in my life whom I trusted affirmed my belief, and this caused me lifelong, irreversible harm. I speak to you today as a victim of one of the biggest medical scandals in the history of the United States of America. I speak to you in the hope that you will have the courage to bring the scandal to an end and ensure that other vulnerable teenagers, children, and young adults don't go through what I went through. At the age of 12, I began to experience what my medical team would later diagnose as gender dysphoria. I was well into an early puberty, and I was very uncomfortable with the changes that were happening to my body. I was intimidated by male attention, and when I told my parents that I felt like a boy, in retrospect, all I meant was that I hated puberty, that I wanted this newfound sexual attention to go away, that I looked up to my brothers a little bit more than I did to my sisters. I came out as transgender in a letter I sent on the dining room table. My parents were immediately concerned. They felt like they needed to get outside help from medical professionals, but this proved to be a mistake. It immediately set our entire family down a path of ideologically motivated deceit and coercion. The gender specialist I was taken to see told my parents that I needed to be put on puberty-blocking drugs right away. They asked my parents a simple question: would you rather have a dead daughter or a living transgender son? The choice was...
Do you guys see that? Do you see how they actually try to psychologically manipulate the parents? Would you want a dead daughter or a living transgender son? You see, this is exactly what I'm talking about. The powers that be, the people have an agenda, you guys. And mind you, this girl, Chloe Cole, she was only 12 at the time. So here she is explaining that because she was going through puberty. I mean, I'm sure this has happened to many people. Think about it, right? Even as a boy, even me, right? As a young man, I remember growing up when I went through puberty. I remember how awkward that was. My voice cracking in and out. You don't fully have a real beard like, the real men do, or older men do, right? So you go through a slight phase in your life where you're just like, oh man, I don't really feel comfortable. But could you imagine telling a boy, because you don't have a full beard yet and because your voice is cracking, you know what, you should maybe become a girl? I mean, every boy goes through the same experience. I mean, it's called growing up. Eventually, the voice cracking is going to stop. Eventually, your balls are going to drop even more so. Eventually, you're going to grow more facial hair. I mean, it is what it is. So here you have a girl that she's starting to blossom. She's starting to grow breasts. She's starting to, go through these changes. And she probably has her own version of discomfort or, awkwardness that she's going through. And rather than allowing her to see the light at the end of the tunnel, you just rush to the conclusion, oh, you don't feel comfortable? That means because you were meant to be a boy. And then you're going to allow this girl to mutilate herself? All right,
It was enough for my parents to let their guard down. And in retrospect, I can't blame them. This was the moment that we all became victims of so-called gender-affirming care. I was fast-tracked onto puberty blockers and then testosterone. The resulting menopausal-like hot flashes made focusing on school impossible. I still get joint pains and weird pops in my back, but they were far worse when I was on the blockers. A month later, when I was 13, I had my first testosterone injection. It's caused permanent changes to my body. My voice will forever be deeper, my jawline sharper, my nose longer, my bone structure permanently masculinized, my Adam's apple more prominent, my fertility unknown.
Man.
I look in the mirror sometimes and I feel like a monster. I had a double mastectomy at 15. They tested my amputated breast for cancer. And I was cancer-free, of course. I was perfectly healthy. There was nothing wrong with my still developing body or my breasts, other than that, as an insecure teenage girl, I felt awkward about it. After my breasts were taken away from me, the tissue was incinerated. Before I was able to legally drive, I had a huge part of my future womanhood taken from me. I will never be able to breastfeed. I struggle to look at myself in the mirror at times. I still struggle to this day with sexual dysfunction. And I have massive scars across my chest And the skin grafts that they took of my nipples, are weeping fluid today. And they were grafted into a more masculine positioning, they said. After surgery, my grades in school plummeted. Everything that I went through did nothing to address my underlying mental health issues that I had. And my doctors, with their theories on gender, thought that all my problems would go away as soon as I was surgically transformed into something that vaguely resembled a boy. Their theories were wrong. The drugs and surgeries changed my body, but they did not and could not change the basic reality that I am and forever will be a female.
You see, is things like this, conversations like this, from Chloe Cole. This is what the trans community do not want to show people. This is what the LGBT community at large do not want to show people. You have women that are literally scarred for the rest of their lives, not only physically, as she has mentioned, but also mentally. They are scarred for their entire lives. And we are still promoting that children should go under reassignment surgery. And they promote things like D. Wade transitioning his son, where now D. Wade's son will never be able to reproduce for the rest of his life, right? In other words, you have essentially castrated that boy. They will promote that in Hollywood. They will promote that in the media. They will promote that all over the internet. But when you have stories like this, where this woman is talking about detransitioning and why she did it because her childhood was ruined, when you have stories like Dwight Howard physically being hard on his son because he's training him to be a man, they're going to demonize that, but they're going to praise Dwayne Wade. They're going to praise all these other transgenders because they think that somehow that is the new fad. That is, again, this is none other than the role and the effective coercion of the mind by Satan. Satan has done a wonderful job, a superb job in manipulating the masses to actually believe in this delusion. And now you have people who, again, they are literally scarred for the rest of their lives. She said it herself. She has a more pronounced Adam's apple. Her jaw is going to be permanently masculinized. It's more chiseled. Her nose bridge is more pronounced. I mean, you could tell she's a woman, but now she has to live with the fact that she has these masculine features for the rest of her life. All because they told her at the age of 12 that it was okay to transition. If that's not medical malpractice, I do not know what is.
When my specialist first told my parents that they could have a dead daughter or a live transgender son, I wasn't suicidal. I was a happy child who struggled because she was different. However, at 16, after my surgery, I did become suicidal. I'm doing better now. But my parents almost got the dead daughter promised to them by my doctors. My doctors had almost created the very nightmare they said they were trying to avoid. So what message do I want to bring to American teenagers and their families? I didn't need to be lied to. I needed compassion. I needed to be loved. I needed to be given therapy to help me work through my issues, not affirm to my delusion that by transforming into a boy, it would solve all my problems. We need to stop telling 12-year-olds that they were born wrong, that they are right to reject their own bodies and feel uncomfortable with their own skin. We need to stop telling children that puberty is an option, that they can choose what kind of puberty they will go through, just so they can choose what clothes to wear or what music to listen to. Puberty is a rite of passage to adulthood, not a disease to be mitigated. Today, I should be at home with my family celebrating my 19th birthday, and instead I'm making a desperate plea to my elected representatives.
Wow, she's not even 20 yet. Wow.
Learn the lessons from other medical scandals like the opioid crisis. To recognize that doctors are human too, and sometimes they are wrong. My childhood was ruined along with thousands of detransitioners that I know through our networks. This needs to stop. You alone can stop it. Enough children have already been victimized by this barbaric pseudoscience. Please let me be your final warning. Thank you.
Man, that is well said. It is a pseudoscience, a fake science, you guys. So if you enjoyed this clip, click on the full video, right here. And if you would like to see more videos like this, click on the playlist right here. Game hard, y'all.